Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. It's Thursday. We're entering week 2 of the NFL season. And look, it's kind of crazy to think that, after a week 1 like that, how can you really follow it up? Ari, look, how you doing? It's Thursday. We got a football game tonight. And then pretty much just looking at the weekend slate. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Can't complain. When we have football on tonight, obviously it'll be interesting to see how I believe it's the first Amazon Prime game tonight. With Richard Sherman, that's one of the commentators, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes tonight.
Yeah, and the two guys on the call will be Al Michaels, former at Sunday Night Football, alongside Chris Collinsworth. That duo was there for a long time. And then you bring in Kirk Herbstreit, college football analysis and college football broadcaster. So, good to see how a different look for it. I've heard about that new football that they're going to try and debut as well. We'll see how that looks if they do debut it. Obviously, the more aerodynamic one for, potential 99-yard touchdowns. We'll see. But we're going to get right into it here. We already talked about how we're just going to do our preview of the whole week and obviously starts tonight. And the first true Thursday night football game on Amazon Prime Video is a good AFC West battle between the Chargers and the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chargers, they're missing Keenan Allen. That's a big loss. I believe J.C. Jackson is still out. Last I remembered, he was questionable coming into tonight's matchup. But look, if you're the Chiefs in this situation, right, you've owned the Chargers in this division for a good amount of time. You have the Chiefs coming off a big win against Arizona on the road, and now you get to go play your first home game. And, definitely Arrowhead Stadium is going to be loud. It's going to be rocking. It's early September, and so weather's not going to play a huge factor in it. I mean, you look at the Chargers, and they had a pretty gritty win against a pretty decent Raiders team at home. Obviously, Keenan Allen being out is definitely going to be a huge factor in this game. Ari, fantasy-wise, what do you see from the Chargers and Chiefs, and who do you have winning this?
Yeah, so, last week we saw the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes got pretty much whatever he wanted. There's, no pass rush from the Cardinals, so I'm interested to see how the Chiefs' O-line holds up here against Mack and Bosa and that Chargers defensive line. I think that'll be one of the bigger storylines I'm looking at. I know with Keenan Allen out, that's obviously a huge loss for the Chargers. I know last year we saw Josh Palmer step up when he was out, but then last week it was more DeAndre Carter and more kind of spread the ball around with Herbert. So that's why I'm not as bullish on Palmer. I was heading into the season, but I didn't expect guys like DeAndre Carter to step up like he did last week. And then you also have the addition of Gerald Everett, who had a touchdown last week. So I'm not super bullish on Josh Palmer. And even Michael Williams I was never huge on just due to his inconsistency. And, while it seems like this might be a week where he could step up, and it certainly could, you can also argue that having Keenan Allen helps him, open up the field for Mike Williams. So that's why I'm also, nervous about Mike Williams. But Herbert are still, whether it's Mike Williams, Palmer, Carter, Everett, even Eckler in the passing game, he'll still, find his ways. But Keenan Allen is a pretty big loss to this offense. I think the Chiefs kind of rolled their momentum from last week into this week in their home opener. I think it would be a relatively close game. I don't think it's going to be, the blowout that it was last week between the Chiefs and the Cardinals. But I have the Chiefs at home winning this game.
Yeah, I agree with you too. Look, you talked about the Chiefs last week, and they looked like they were just playing, practice football, the way that offense was just moving on the field. And obviously, you can credit that to Patrick Mahomes being Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to keep doing that. He's never going to stop. But at the same time, that pass rush was missing J.J. Watt and for Arizona last week, and that could have been a big factor. And now the Chiefs really have a big step up in terms of pass rush. You have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, definitely two big studs who can really get to the quarterback. And then for the Chargers, yeah, you mentioned it. Look, the receiving core is a little depleted right now. You have Keenan Allen, who's going to be out, and that's the number one. So you have to rely on, guys like Gerald Everett and Mike Williams, and who's been inconsistent in the past and is looking inconsistent this season. And then you have guys like DeAndre Carter stepping up, and that affects Joshua Palmer's fantasy value. So But I mean, in terms of Austin Eckler, I mean, he's going to be your number one target. Honestly, I feel like Justin Herbert is going to be dumping down to Eckler a lot. Using him in the run and pass game, as the Chargers like to do in that offense. I feel like this is going to be a good game. I like this first Thursday night football matchup of the season. Two good teams. Both improved in the offseason, and both are starting 1-0. So it'll definitely be a great game. I love to see the Chargers, get a good staple win in this division, and gain some respect in this division, because a lot of people have already wrote them out, or, after the Kansas City Chiefs completely dominated Arizona week 1, people are kind of switching against the Chargers and moving now to the Chiefs. So now we get to see this week 2 matchup. And, these two teams know each other very well, obviously. Mahomes and Herbert, pretty much the consensus top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now. And then Mahomes, just the way, him and Travis Kelce are basically the best duo in football right now in terms of passing. I mean, those two always find a connection, whether it's on 3rd and long or 1st and short or whatever. I like the Chiefs at home in this game. I think the Chiefs are favored by 4. So I feel like the Chiefs probably win by maybe a touchdown, or maybe it'll come down to like a field goal. But no Harrison Butker for this Chiefs the Chiefs, so that's going to be a big loss. They have to rely on Matt Amendola. I think they just signed him, to the practice squad and elevated him from the practice squad to start tonight's game. So, definitely interesting to see how the kicking goes for the Chiefs, but I still think the Chiefs will definitely win this game. Definitely going to be a good game to watch defensively, to see how this Chiefs O-line really matches up against, this improved Chargers defense, for my opinion. And then we're going to go straight into the next one. This is for Sunday. This is the 10 a.m. slate. The first game we saw was the Jets going to the Browns. And for the Jets, this is the second out of their 4 AFC North matchups. They start the season facing the whole AFC North division, which is kind of crazy. They lost to the Ravens last week at home, and now they get to travel to Cleveland. And look, I mean, Cleveland, they're coming off a last-second field goal win against a really, really not great Carolina Panthers team. And the Jets, obviously, they're coming off a bad loss. No Zach Wilson, I believe, still for this week. He's still practicing, but he's still injured, so they're going to have to rely on Joe Flacco again. And for this Browns team, obviously, it was just ground and pound, using Nick Chubb on the ground. He ran for over 140 yards, and they definitely used Kareem Hunt as well, in the passing offense. And Jacoby Brissett looked pretty competent. So, Ari, look, we're heading into week 2 for the Browns. And, obviously the bigger question is, obviously, what is this offense going to look with Deshaun Watson now that it's without for now? But, they got a big win on the road against not a pretty average Panthers team that, obviously still has CMC and, the whole Baker revenge game. And, what do you see from the Browns offensively that can really, prove to be one of the biggest factors of winning in terms of fantasy? And then for the Jets, do you see any value on fantasy? I mean, they have to start against Myles Garrett, and that Browns defense is legit. They forced Baker Mayfield to have a little bit of trouble last week. So what do you see offensively from both teams, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, and I think with the Browns, it's pretty clear. Everyone knows they're going to try to run the ball early and often with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Try to kind of limit Jacoby Brissett's kind of attempts and kind of keep them, inside the chains. I think, Chubb and Kareem Hunt are going to have another big week. I'm looking to see a little bit more involvement in David Njoku. I think he only had 1 target last week. So I'm looking to see if he can take a step forward this week. With the Jets, I mean, the only player I'm somewhat comfortable starting is Elijah Moore. The backfield, we kind of saw a I believe it was a somewhat even split between Michael Carter and Breece Hall. And so, that type of split on this offense is not, that enticing in fantasy football. Carter and Hall could be decent, super desperate starts if you're really desperate, but ideally, like you said, against Myles Garrett and that front 7, I don't see too much success, from them. But Breece Hall, I believe, caught 6 passes last week, so the involvement in the passing game could be there for them again, especially if Joe Flacco's being pressured early, just dump it off to Brees Hall, Michael Carter, whoever's on the field. But I mean, I think the Browns are going to win this one fairly easily. I think that they're going to control the whole clock with Chubb and Kareem Hunt and send the Jets to 0-2.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like this Browns team, they definitely know how to just run the clock. That's definitely their offense right now with Deshaun Watson out for a long amount of time with his ongoing investigation. I feel like this Browns team definitely, using the ground and pound, running that offense into the ground with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is going to be, one of the things they lean on throughout the early weeks of the season. And it worked last week, getting the win against Carolina. And it's going to prove evident this week against the Jets, I feel like. And then for the Jets offensively, I agree with you. I feel like that backfield, really showed that Michael Carter definitely is a lot more involved than we thought that he was going to be in the run game to complement Joe Flacco. We thought he was going to be more in the passing game, and Brees Hall was going to be the 3-down back. But it looked like it was pretty much the complete reverse throughout that majority of the game last week against the Ravens. So I definitely agree with you. Maybe Michael Carter. I'd be really hesitant on Brees Hall as well, just, with how that offense is going to be working him in the passing game right now, and then maybe Elijah Moore as well. But I definitely see the Browns winning as well. I feel like this is just, another I don't think it's going to be – well, right. I think right now the Browns are about like a 7-point favorite, so about a touchdown. I feel like that's a good line for them. I feel like the Browns, just offensively are going to be too much in terms of running the ball down the Jets' throat on Sunday, and that's why I feel like the Browns are definitely going to win this game. And we're going to move on right to the next game here, and this one's interesting. The Commanders and the Lions, and the Lions coming off a bad loss at home to the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Commanders coming off a comeback win against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. And, the Detroit Lions are favored in this one by about 2 points. So it's pretty much, kind of close, but between these two, rebranding teams in the NFC. The Commanders, obviously, they looked pretty good offensively in that later half. Obviously, one of the questions was what is Terry McLaurin's use. Obviously, his touches were getting a little bit depleted throughout that game. He only had 2 receptions, about 58 yards and a touchdown. So, and there was a lot more Curtis Samuel involvement. So that could be a big question for fantasy owners as well. Like, what's the difference between those two? And then you have for the Lions, just that whole offense has definitely been producing. I like what the Lions have been doing this year. You have Jared Goff obviously as the quarterback, and he's just the fill-in for now until they find someone new for the future. But DeAndre Swift, wow, he carried the ball. He had so much upside. I think he finished with like over 150 yards. Oh, Ari left for a little bit, so he'll be right back. But we had DeAndre Swift carrying the ball. They used a lot of that offense. I like what the Lions are doing this year, and it was in front of a sellout crowd. They definitely got to Jalen Hurts a lot in that game. It was pretty electric what I saw. I like seeing what this Lions team can do for the future, but for the Commanders, obviously, it's a lot more questions in terms of their defense. Allowing Jacksonville to kind of be in that game, but coming up clutch when it really matters. And then you also have for the Lions, definitely their defense is kind of something that they'll be leaning on a lot more throughout the remaining part of the schedule, because their offense, is definitely clicking. But the bigger question is their defense. Obviously, that's been one of the bigger things that's been, really big question. Can Jeff Okudah, can like an Aiden Hutchinson really do anything to step up and really do anything to really make this a big difference? We're experiencing some technical difficulties right now. We'll be right back here. Sorry, right now he's going to be restarting his computer, so he'll be right back. But I'm going to get into this game first. I like the Lions in this game personally. From from an NFL standpoint. I feel like the Lions can definitely, get to Carson Wentz. They did it somewhat last week to Jalen Hurts. They definitely brought the pressure, and I feel like that crowd, that atmosphere at Ford Field really, got to him, especially on those fourth downs. When you have a indecisive quarterback like that, really doesn't prove to be any great for you. So I feel like for this Commanders team, it really comes down to how they play offensively and how they're going to use Antonio Gibson, how they're going to use J.D. McKissick, how they're going to use Terry McLaurin, and Logan Thomas. He even saw some receptions as well from Carson Wentz. And the thing with Carson Wentz, he definitely loves to spread the ball out. Obviously we saw that Terry McLaurin, did not get as many receptions as people were anticipating, and maybe that's because new quarterback, definitely more options, and Carson Wentz loves to throw the ball a lot. Ari, welcome back to the show here. I was just getting into this matchup here. I feel like the Lions can definitely pull this one off. Last week we saw the Lions really get to Jalen Hurts throughout that game, but definitely one of the bigger questions is their defense. Allowing that many points. Aiden Hutchinson didn't really get to see much of him last week as well. Okuda as well. For the Commanders, obviously that Carson Wentz resurgence, I feel like it definitely could be evident, of what what's the expression? The tide shifting, in Washington, a better quarterback coming into the system now. And they got a big win last week, but Ari, now that you're back, I wanted to ask you, in terms of fantasy offensively, what do you see from this Washington Commanders team that has, it's kind of crazy to think that we have a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. You have Curtis Samuel, you have Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas got involved a lot, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick. And then for that Lions offense, it feels like, DeAndre Swift is kind of the leader. And then, they still have T.J. Hawkinson. Of course, they still have DJ Chark as well, the guy that they just brought in. And obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's elevated his game to a new level. What do you like offensively from both of these two teams?
Yeah, like you said, both teams offensively looked pretty good last week. I think that's going to continue into this game. I was always kind of concerned about McLaurin, and I didn't expect them to spread the ball around as much as they did. I didn't think, Kirsten was going to see, I don't know, like 11 touches or whatever he saw last week. I'm not sure if that continues or not. I guess, we'll have to see. Jahan Dawson had the 2 touchdowns, but not much other than that. And then McLaurin, I think Gibson was heavily involved in the passing game as well, which probably will continue. But I like the Lions offense a lot. It will be worth noting to see if DeAndre Swift plays because he missed practice on Wednesday. So we'll have to see if he returns to practice today. And if he misses another practice, and that becomes concerning, for his status on Sunday. But even then, Jamal Williams has shown that he can step up, in his absence if needed. I like the Lions a little bit more at home here. I think that they're going to score a little bit more in what I think will be a relatively, higher scoring game. Like we saw with the Lions last week against the Eagles. I like the Lions a little bit more here at home.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like this is definitely going to be a lot more high scoring from these two teams. Obviously, not the best defensively. You mentioned DeAndre Swift's health, and definitely Jamal Williams is a big asset to have in the backfield. I feel like him coming in is definitely kind of basically a good replacement in case DeAndre Swift goes down. And I like the Lions in this as well. I think it's going to be high scoring, but I feel like the Detroit Lions may get a last-second field goal to get their first win of the season after just coming up short against a good Eagles team. For this Commanders offense, you mentioned, I even forgot to mention Jahan Dotson, and that's one of the new emerging favorite receivers for Carson Wentz in that Commanders offense. And you also have Gibson along in the passing game as well. So just so many mouths to feed on that offense, and I feel like definitely could be a shadow for Terry McLaurin, the star on that offense for years. With multiple quarterbacks, going through that system. But I feel like the Lions will get a solid win at home to get their first win of the season on Sunday. And now we move on to the next game on the 10 a.m. slate. I believe it was the Buccaneers and Saints, and we got a good one here. And look, the Saints, they know how to get to Tom Brady. We've seen it throughout his time in Tampa Bay. this Saints defense just knows how to get in his head. They intercept him. Obviously, now they have Tyrann Mathieu as well, so that's an even bigger asset for this Saints defense. So defensively, I feel like the Saints will match up well. And obviously, the questions about how that offense we talked about on Sunday night's game, how this offense can finish in the red zone. And I feel like their offense is definitely going to struggle against a Saints team that just pulled up an amazing comeback win against the Falcons on the road. I mean, for the Saints offensively, we saw the resurgence of Michael Thomas. It was great to see him. And, bigger questions about Alvin Kamara, obviously not getting as many touches and just not looking as dominant as he did like for the past couple seasons. Maybe that may be with the upcoming legal action that may be against him soon or whenever that is. But so Ari, let's take a look here. Buccaneers and Saints. We know that Tom Brady struggles against this Saints team. I think his numbers are about 60% completion, 8 touchdowns, 6 picks, not good at all. But can this Saints offense really compete against a Bucs defense that just allowed, a struggling Cowboys offense for only 3 points, the only team that did not score a touchdown for the Dallas Cowboys last week? What do you look in this matchup offensively? I mean, is there really any offense that you can really see booming? I mean, in terms of how Brady plays against the Saints team and how the Saints offense really struggled throughout the majority of the game against a really bad Falcons defense.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Brady has never beaten the Saints as a Buccaneer, so that's the first thing we're looking to see is if he can finally, break through against the Saints. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely expecting more of a defensive battle here between two relatively strong defenses. I know the Saints struggled a little bit against Atlanta last week, but they were still able to pull through in the end. Of course, no Chris Godwin now for the Buccaneers. We'll see who can step out between Julio Jones, Russell Gage. Mike Evans is also dealing with a minor calf injury, but I believe he should be good to go for Sunday. And then, with the Saints, Michael Thomas caught the 2 touchdowns last week. He didn't do too much other than that, so we'll see if he can get more involved elsewhere. I believe I saw that Kamara was a little bit banged up, which is part of why he didn't get as many touches. So we'll see if he gets more involved here. And then, we'll see if guys like Chris Olave can step up. Jarvis Landry had a big game last week, so we'll see if he can step up again. But, I mean, I'm going with the Saints here. I mean, until Brady can beat them, I think the Saints match up really, really well with them. We saw the Bucs offensive line as well struggle last week. So I think the Saints pass rush is going to get to Brady pretty early. I like the Saints offense to do just enough in what should be a pretty low-scoring game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like the Saints will do just enough to end this low-scoring matchup here. You mentioned Brady has never defeated this Bucs team. No, defeated the Saints team ever since he went to the Bucs, and I feel like it just continues because this defense really knows how to get to him. They know to put pressure on him, and with Brady's not as improved offensive line and the Saints improving better in the secondary, I feel like this is just screaming that the Saints are definitely going to win this game at home, especially since it's a home game as well in New Orleans. I feel like the Saints team is definitely going to get to him. And you mentioned, no Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans is also a little banged up. So they're going to have to depend on Julio Jones, who does know how to play the Saints team, obviously. And then they're going to have to depend on guys like Russell Gage, who also knows how to play the Saints team. The Buccaneers are definitely going to have to rely on, a couple guys who, also are kind of injured right now. But in this battle of the defenses, I feel like the Saints defense will definitely hold the Buccaneers a little more. Right now, Tampa Bay is about a 3-point favorite. So anything Saints to cover the spread or Saints money line is definitely your best bet this weekend, since this Buccaneers team does not really have any success against the New Orleans Saints. But now we're going to move on to our next matchup here, and the Panthers and the Giants. Giants coming off a surprising win against the Titans last week on the road, now have to come back home and play the Panthers, who just lost off of a long field goal by Cade York of the Cleveland Browns. And look, I don't know if I want to really buy this Giants team right now. I didn't get to really watch much of that Giants-Titans game last week, but I just don't buy it. I feel like the resurgence of Saquon Barkley is here. Obviously, he came back, and you've mentioned it many, many times that you should buy Saquon this year. And And it proved what week one, he definitely was one of the best running backs in the league. We saw him resurge back, but now he's obviously coming back to play the Panthers. And, there's so many questions with the quarterback room and, Daniel Jones, is he really going to be that guy? And, it was great to see, great to see Brian Dable get his first win as a head coach in the National Football League against a pretty decent Titans team. But the Titans, obviously, they were just offensively horrible for that second half. They didn't do anything against that Giants defense. And for the Panthers, we already talked about them. Baker Mayfield definitely struggled against a Browns team that, was better defensively than the Giants, I believe. And then you also have Christian McCaffrey. I feel like he's going to be used a lot more in this game on the ground. And, they still have the deep threat Robbie Anderson. And, there's still questions about DJ Moore. Right now, the Giants are a 2-point favorite in this game at home. Ari, what do you like offensively from both these teams, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, man, it's definitely a fun, running back battle between McCaffrey and Barkley. The Giants made the late comeback last week, so I'm looking to see if they can kind of carry that momentum into this game. And the Panthers, I mean, like you said, the Giants, I don't think Mayfield faces as much pressure against the Giants compared to last week against the Browns, so that should help him. I'm looking to see more involvement from DJ Moore, who I believe only caught 2 passes last week, and then potentially more involvement, for McCaffrey, who, he still had a decent game last week, but not necessarily up to his standards. So looking for a bigger game from both Moore and McCaffrey. I'm expecting a relatively lower scoring game from these two teams, maybe like in the 20s. Not super low scoring, but not super high scoring either. The Giants, still unknown with the receiving core. Kadarius Toney hardly played last week. Sterling Shepard, had the big touchdown. But there's still really no clarity, or reliability in that receiving core, for fantasy managers. I like more McCaffrey to do just enough for the Panthers to take this one on the road over the Giants, but I'm looking for another big game from Saquon Barkley as well.
I definitely agree with you on both ends. I feel like this is going to be like a running back versus running back game. Which one's better, McCaffrey or Barkley? And I feel like the Panthers will do just enough to squeak by this Giants team, who I wouldn't say had a fluke week one win, but, definitely were not the favorites in that game against the Titans at all. And I feel like it'll be evident that the Panthers, really, can win a game under Baker Mayfield this week. Obviously, Baker just playing his team last week. He came back and made it close, but Browns game, that last second field goal was the sealer for them. And you have this Giants team, obviously, offensively, it's kind of just relying on Saquon Barkley. The pass game is still the bigger question, whether Daniel Jones can really throw the ball. We saw guys like Kadarius Toney, who are supposed to be, really, really high assets this year for the passing game, really just disappoint in week one. And, that just kind of shows you that this quarterback question is really the big question for this for this Giants team. And, I feel like the Panthers will just do enough to win this game as well. We're going to move on down to the Patriots and Steelers. And, this game, if it was 2015, wow, this is a Monday night game. I mean, if this is 2015, this is the Monday night, Sunday night, whatever you want to call it. But now it's 2022, and the Patriots, they got Mac Jones at the quarterback, and the Steelers have Mitchell Trubisky. And look, both offenses look bad. I mean, really bad. I mean, the Patriots, they're in trouble. The Patriots looked horrible last week against Miami Dolphins down there. I mean, Mac Jones, he's also injured, and, he just didn't look good against that Dolphins defense. And, Tua is somehow 4-0 against Bill Belichick. Who would have thought that? But the Patriots, definitely defensively not – I mean, they tried, obviously, keeping it close, 20-7 loss against the Dolphins. But, this offense just does not look like anything is going to be producing. That offensive line, was not really protecting Mac Jones well. The running game did not really develop behind Stevenson and Damian Harris, and then the receiving core as well. Just nothing really developed offensively, and I feel like that's going to be the theme for this Patriots team throughout the season. For the Steelers, they relied so heavily on their defense because, Joe Burrow throwing multiple interceptions and obviously having that fumble as well was the sole reason they kind of kept them in this game. And, this is in Pittsburgh right now. Somehow New England's a 2-point favorite just because it's Bill Belichick against Mike Tomlin. But I think the Steelers may pull this one out just because of how offensively this Patriots team does not have anything going well for them. And then for the Steelers defensively, I feel like they can get to him, bring a lot of pressure, make it a living hell for Mac Jones in Pittsburgh this weekend. I don't know about you, but I feel like the Steelers team is a little underrated right now in terms of their defense. I mean, obviously they lose T.J. Watt, which is a big loss for a majority of the season, but they still have Minkah Fitzpatrick in that secondary. They still have Cam Hayward up front. From both teams offensively, do you really see anything developing? Obviously, I believe Najee Harris is playing, so that's a big win for the Steelers, getting their star running back, but still he's not fully healthy. And then for the Patriots, we didn't really see that much offense last week, and I don't know how that really carries into a week where you're playing pretty much a defense that almost is the same stature, if not a little better. Ari, what do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I agree. I think another relatively low-scoring game on both sides. Najee's supposed to play, but how healthy he is the question. We saw the Patriots struggles last week, and yeah, I agree that even without T.J. Watt, they'll probably still, struggle a bit in this game as well. So yeah, I'm leaning towards the Steelers at home, and what should be a relatively, ugly offensive game, I think, on both sides.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on all those things right there. We'll just move on to the Colts and Jags, and the Colts obviously coming off of a tie against the Houston Texans down in Houston. They were struggling throughout that game. Matt Ryan couldn't do anything. We saw the resurgence of Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor. He was struggling throughout that first half, but then finally burst onto the scene. It looked like the whole Colts offense was just inexistent about the first half, and then in the fourth quarter decided to really come back and start playing football, and eventually end up in the tie. It was bad to see that Rodrigo Blankenship did get cut from this Colts team. He was definitely a fan favorite throughout the league just because of how his unorthodox style, off the field, and then on the field, he's one of the more consistent kickers. Not anymore, but now they travel to Jacksonville, who obviously, we saw a lot more of James Robinson in the backfield. A lot of Travis Etienne fantasy owners are definitely worried right now to see what that split is really going to be. But obviously, they paid Christian Kirk a lot of money for a reason. He showed up week one against the Commanders as well on the road. Right now, I believe the Colts are a 4-point favorite. I feel like the Colts are definitely going to win this game as well. I feel like week one was just the struggle week, and I feel like Matt Ryan will do what Carson Wentz could not do last year and win in Jacksonville when it matters. But I feel like this Colts team, definitely they rely on Jonathan Taylor, and they rely on him so much that that offensive line can just do whatever they want, and Jonathan Taylor will have a 150-yard game, which is incredible still. And then, seeing Michael Pittman, surge up to be a low-end, probably low to high-end wide receiver 2, potentially wide receiver 1 upside. Great to see there. Laurie, what do you think offensively from the Colts? Do you see a lot of Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor being used? And then for the Jaguars, what is the split between James Robinson and Travis Etienne?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good bounce back for the Colts. It's another big game from Taylor and Pittman, as expected. The Jaguars split, it was relatively even last week. It was just, if you looked at the box score, it didn't look like that way, but Etienne could have easily had 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence missed him on the wheel route early in the game, and then he dropped what would have been an easy walk-in touchdown. I think it was on 4th and goal as well, so I still like Etienne. I liked his usage and how he was being used. More times now they're going to complete that wheel route, and Etienne's going to catch that pass. That would have been a touchdown as well. So I still like Etienne in PPR leagues. I liked his usage in the passing game, and then I liked a couple of his explosive runs that he had on in terms of carries. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be enough to beat the Colts here. I think that they're going to, have a nice bounce back game off the tie last week against the Texans.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like this is a bounce back win for the Colts. I feel like they're offensively just going to be too much for this Jags defense that allowed a comeback for the Commanders last week, and the Colts definitely had a week one struggle. Trying to merge that offense well throughout the first 3 quarters, but I feel like now they've really meshed well, and that'll definitely carry on to the momentum heading into week 2 against the Jaguars. And I feel like this Jaguars team, will just not match up well. Yeah, we saw a lot of James Robinson and Travis Etienne, but you also mentioned that Etienne obviously easily could have had 2 touchdowns, but they definitely rely on James Robinson a lot more. I feel like that may be the focal point of the offense for a little while until they really get used to Travis Etienne. So we'll see how that develops. But I also have the Colts winning in that matchup as well. But now we're going to move on to the last game of the 10 a.m. slot, and it is the Dolphins and the Ravens. Ravens coming off a dominant win on the road against the Jets, where we saw a bunch of Lamar Jackson just doing what Lamar Jackson does. We had a deep route to Rashad Bateman for that long touchdown. We saw Devin Duvernay used a lot more as well. And I feel like just because the passing game was, one of the bigger questions on Lamar, really using his wide receivers well. And I feel like he used them pretty well last week, in my opinion. And now they're hoping to get J.K. Dobbins back this week. So that'd definitely be huge if he can play. But they still have Kenyon Drake and Mike Davis in that backfield in case he cannot go for the first home game for Baltimore. And then on the opposite side of the Dolphins, obviously the offense has been one of the bigger things. The resurgence, obviously, Tua looked pretty decent in his Week 1 debut with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on opposite sides of the field. Dolphins' speed is definitely going to be one of the bigger advantages this year. How much speed they have on offense, obviously. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I mean, Jesus Christ, those are some of the fastest receivers in the game right now. Ari, offensively, do you think the Dolphins can really match up against a better defense in the Ravens compared to the Patriots? And then for the Ravens, what do you like offensively? We're probably going to see a lot of Lamar Jackson, obviously, but outside of Lamar, potentially J.K. Dobbins coming back. We'll see him, but what do you like in this game, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, this should be a pretty fun game. So it'll be the first kind of true test for Tua against better defense. With Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the Ravens side, it sounds like J.K. Dobbins is going to play, but I still expect him to be eased back in. So I would not be starting him in fantasy football. I'm looking to potentially see Lamar Jackson run a little bit more. We didn't see it too much last week. But I'm also kind of curious if he's maybe not going to run as much, maybe because he just doesn't want to get hurt, with this looking for the new contract. So I'm kind of curious to see if he's going to run a little bit more this week or if it's going to be like last week where he's going to kind of sit in the pocket a little bit more. You mentioned Devin Duvernay had the 2 touchdowns last week, but not much other than that. So I'm not too much bothered on him. I'm looking to see a little bit more involvement from Rashad Bateman this week, as well as Mark Andrews, who I think only caught 3 passes last week. This is in Baltimore. I think the home crowd's gonna be a little bit too much, but I think it's gonna be close. But I like the Ravens to pull it out.
I do too. I like the Ravens to get this win as well. I like how the Ravens just play offensively. Defensively, they're still going to be there, and I feel like they're going to really test Tua this week versus last week, where they had to play the Patriots, and Tua was already undefeated against Bill Belichick heading into that game, and now they play a bigger test, and I feel like that'll definitely be a lot more fun game to watch. And I feel like this Ravens team definitely going to be interesting to see how they use J.K. Dobbins if he's coming back. When you mentioned Lamar Jackson, we know his dual threat ability, and we didn't get to see much of him running the ball. But you also mentioned he's on a contract year, and that also could be another reason why he doesn't want to get hurt, because then his value will plummet. So I definitely agree with you there. I feel like the Ravens are definitely going to bring in the atmosphere in Baltimore. I feel like the Ravens will definitely pull out this win at home. But now we're going to move on to the afternoon slate now. We've reached the afternoon slate of football on Sunday. And the first one we have is the Falcons and the Rams. This is in LA. The Rams coming off a brutal Week 1 loss at home in the opener against the Bills. The Bills just outmanned them on all sides of the ball. Defensively, they were better. Offensively, they were better. And then the Falcons, obviously, the Falcons do what the Falcons do best. They choked a big lead against the Saints with I believe 8 minutes left of the game. They had a 16-point lead, lost by 1. Falcons are going to do what the Falcons are going to do. Right now, the Rams are a 10-point favorite. Offensively, for the Falcons, I'd like to see a lot more Drake London. Obviously, fantasy owners of Kyle Pitts are very frustrated after week 1, not really seeing that many targets. And then, we saw the still continued surges of Cordell Patterson. So, a lot of people are really down on him just because of, them drafting Tyler Algier, and we didn't get to see him at all. And Cordell Patterson, just ran through that Saints defense last week for 150 yards. And then for the Rams, obviously, they still have Cooper Kupp. They still have Matt Stafford. Allen Robinson was a bigger disappointment in week 1. Didn't get to see a lot of him. Along with Cam Akers, those were two people you were really high on week 1. And I was as well. And we didn't get to see Cam Akers at all really get any touches on the ground or in the passing game. And then Allen Robinson, very minimal as well. Ari, heading into this week 2, what do you expect offensively from the Rams? Do you think a resurgence of offense from Allen Robinson and Cam Akers is in the works? And, for the Falcons, can they really compete with this Rams team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Falcons are going to kind of be scrappy all year. I don't think they're going to really get blown out, too badly. But I still feel like this is going to be a good bounce back spot for the Rams. You mentioned Allen Robinson, Cam Akers. So those are definitely the two players I'm most gonna, be looking for. Maybe out of any team this weekend or any player this weekend. I mean, I like Allen Robinson's chances of bouncing back. Cam Akers is going to depend on how much he's utilized. Sean McVay said he's going to get more opportunity this week, but McVay has said things before that didn't turn out to be true. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. I'm still not totally sold that Henderson's going to see the same workload this week, but it's possible. So we'll have to. That will be something to monitor this week to see if Cam Akers can see more than the 3 carries he saw last week, and utilize more. A lot better, because even like the pass he got last week was 10 yards before it behind the line of scrimmage, and you had to run 10 yards to just even get back to the line of scrimmage. So I'm looking to see if Akers is going to be utilized more in both areas, the run and the pass game. But yeah, I think the Rams are going to dominate this game pretty easily, at home. I think the Falcons are going to, kind of keep it somewhat close, but Rams are going to pull away, in the end, in their home opener.
I don't think it's the Rams.
They were home last week, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say, they were home last week. Yeah, they were home last week, but. Yeah, offensively, I feel like the Rams are definitely going to use a lot more of Cam Akers, hopefully, along with Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was kind of the big addition to that Rams offense after losing Robert Woods in the offseason. And there were still questions on – and we're still waiting to find out where OBJ will potentially sign. There was a little tease that he may sign with the winner of the Bills-Rams game. And, he still hasn't signed with the Bills yet, or he hasn't signed back home with the Rams. So definitely I feel like OBJ may be – if he can improve himself into the Rams offense, coming down the later weeks when they need him, we'll see how that goes. But all in terms of just offense, defense, and special teams, I feel like the Rams just outmanned this Falcons team. The Falcons team were definitely in a rebuild, but the Rams, I just hope to see a lot more of Cam Akers and Allen Robinson as well, involved in the pass game and in the run game. And then now we're going to get into the next slate, not the next one, the next game in the afternoon slot, and it's the Hawks and Niners. Seahawks travel down to San Francisco after their week 1 win against the Broncos on Monday night. And the Niners, they're looking to bounce back after a horrible week 1 game against the Bears on the road. And look, offensively for the Seahawks, they were really, really looking good throughout that first half. We talked about it we talked about it the other day. We talked about how this offense looked a lot better with Shane Waldron and Geno Smith. I feel like those two really go well together. And obviously you mentioned last year was the Russell Wilson show, and now that he's gone, this offense can really flow in a system led by Shane Waldron. That's why we brought him up here for that exact reason. And then, definitely great to see Rashad Penny. I'm excited to see how Kenneth Walker can introduce himself into this offense as well. And then for the Niners, everything is just a bounce back for them. I mean, offensively, they were playing in a lake, for God's sake. I mean, they were playing in the worst conditions. So hopefully we'll see a resurgence of Trey Lance. A lot of people were on the Trey Lance bandwagon for so long, and after that week 1 loss, a lot of them left, and now they're playing their first home opener against a division rival in the Seahawks, and right now the Niners are a 9-point favorite. I feel like that's way too high right now, personally, and I feel like obviously everyone's just counting out the Seahawks team. After their week 1 win, they don't think that they can get it done in week 2 against a division rival. Already offensively, for the Niners, that backfield is depleted. No Elijah Mitchell for a long time. They're going to have to rely on, probably Trey Lance a lot more with his legs. And then obviously Deebo Samuel is going to be probably one of the leading rushers for this Niners team, like how he has always been throughout last season and throughout week 1 as well. And then for the Seahawks team, can they really compete offensively? Because defensively, they look like, they can compete with anyone with how that front four looked. And then, great to see Nwosu and Barton, along with Jordan Brooks, really lead that linebacker core. And then the secondary, a big loss in Jamal Adams, but they still have Quandre Diggs. And, great to see Tariq Woolen have a great week 1 game. What do you like from this game?
Yeah, I'm so torn on this one. It's like my gut is leaning towards the Seahawks here, but my mind is leaning towards the 49ers. So I'm like super, super torn. It's looking like it's going to be another wet game. Obviously, not as bad as last week, in Chicago, but there is rain on the forecast. And I believe it's like a 60%, 70% chance of rain. So it's going to be another wet game, on the field, which, usually favors the running game. So I'm interested to see how the Seahawks utilize Kenneth Walker alongside Rashad Penny. I'm looking for the 49ers to put more pressure on Geno than the Broncos were able to. So we'll see how he's able to handle that. A lot more, maybe more quick passes to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, as well as, the tight ends. On the 49ers side, better performance from Trey Lance. The one kind of factor I'm kind of waiting to see is George Kittle. If he's healthy and playing, I think that's going to be a huge, huge difference, especially with the loss of Elijah Mitchell. They have other running backs, but, it's going to be a little more consistent, I feel like, as a running game. So, leaning on Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Kittle in the passing game, I think would be a huge, not to mention Kittle's ability as a blocker would be huge because the offensive line did not look great against the Bears front seven last week. And, Seahawks put a decent amount of pressure on Russell Wilson last week, so I think that they can get to Trey Lance. But if the 49ers have Kittle as a blocker, that would be huge, for the protection for Trey Lance. So, I mean, it's rare that I'm choosing a game, based off the health of, one player. But right now I'm leaning towards the Seahawks in this game. But if Kittle is healthy and plays, I'm like kind of teetering a little bit more towards 49ers. So that'll be something to monitor. He missed practice on Wednesday, so we'll have to see if he can practice today, on Thursday, and or Friday, to see if he is good to go on Sunday. But right now, I agree either way that it opened with 10 points. It's way too high. This is going to be a relatively low-scoring, close game. So either way, whether Kittle plays or not, I'm on the Seahawks on the spread. And right now, I'm on the Seahawks straight up. But if Kittle plays, I'm like 51-49, leaning towards the 49ers. So it's like that close for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in all aspects there. You mentioned how the rain is definitely going to be a factor. There's some rain in the forecast for Sunday's afternoon matchup between these two teams, and I feel like it's going to be another, Trey Lance, running, run option, triple option, a bunch of those running plays that the Niners had to use last week because of the weather. I thought they'll probably use as well this week. And you mentioned the health of George Kittle. That'll definitely be a huge factor depending on whether it be a blocker, because as a blocker, he's definitely a key asset to that Niners offensive line. And then obviously we've seen him in the receiving game as well, but he shines better as a blocker, and that's why the Niners have been using him a lot more in his most recent games that he's been playing. I definitely agree with you. The Seahawks line is way too high. I feel like the Seahawks could pull this one off, but I'm kind of I'm in the point where obviously I'm never going to root against my Seahawks. Can't ever do that, but at the same time, I feel like this Niners team will definitely be a bigger step because it's definitely week 1 was just a lot more emotional when beating the former quarterback of your own team, and now you're playing a division rival. But the thing is, like, these two teams know each other like the palm of your back, like the back of your hand, pretty much. I feel like every time the Seahawks and Niners play, it's always going to be close and competitive. But this one, obviously, down in Santa Clara, this one's going to be a bigger one. I feel like my heart will never go against the Seahawks, but my brain is telling me, the Niners have a pretty good roster from top down offensively. And then defensively, we already know that Nick Bosa, the threat himself, is going to be there. They still have Fred Warner. They still have Greenlaw. They still have a bunch of names on that defense. So my mind is telling me to go with the Niners, obviously, but I can't ever root against my Seahawks, especially in this divisional matchup. So I'm going to go root for the Seahawks to beat the 49ers and get this good win on Sunday. And then we're going to go into our next game here. This is the Bengals and Cowboys. This is down in Jerry World. This would be a really, really big game if Dak Prescott was playing. This would be a really fun game if Dak Prescott was playing. This would be an offensive shootout if Dak Prescott was playing. But I feel like the Bengals are just going to wipe them. I'm sorry. The Cowboys will not have any offense. They are right now depending on Cooper Rush to lead this team. And I feel like that's not going to lead to any success. I feel like this offense is not going to be able to compete with this Bengals team that offensively had struggled in week 1, but will definitely bounce back week 2. Definitely going to be interesting to see how that Jamar Chase, Trevon Diggs matchup is going to look. There's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of jawing. So I'm excited to see how that works out. And then also T. Higgins, we'll see if he clears concussion protocol, and he'll be a big asset to that Bengals offense. But I see the Bengals winning this game. They are already an 8-point favorite, and I feel like that's perfect for them just because, how that offense for the Cowboys is going to look absolutely horrible this season without Dak Prescott for a little while. I've heard that the Cowboys are shopping for quarterbacks. I even heard that Jimmy G is potentially linked to that linked to that Cowboys organization. But I mean, you never know. It's just rumors at the end of the day. So, Ari, do you see any offense for the Cowboys? And then what do you look for the Bengals to match up against a better not a better defense, but a pretty electric or stout defense in the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, it was a small sample size, obviously only one game, but last year Cooper Rush did start the one game when they beat the Vikings. The Vikings last year, I know Bengals this year, so I still like the Bengals to win this game. But, I mean, CeeDee Lamb had over 100 receiving in that game, so I still think there's going to be some offense. I'm looking to see if the Bengals offensive line can step up against the Cowboys front pass rush that got to Brady last week, and the Steelers got to Burrow last week, so I'm curious to see if Burrow can hold up, in the pocket, with the protection. But yeah, I mean, even if the Cowboys, put pressure on him, I still think the offense is going to be too much, whether they have T. Higgins or not. So I like the Bengals to win this one relatively easily. This is the game of the week in the afternoon because I thought it was going to be Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow. But instead, it's Cooper Rush, Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, look, no, stuff happens. I mean, no one expected Dak Prescott to go down so early, but definitely be interesting to see how Cooper Rush does step up. You mentioned last year in that game against the against the Vikings. Sorry, I was reading the article about the Niners having bad weather again. Yeah, definitely in that game against the Vikings. But the Vikings, are not defensively as good as the Bengals, in my opinion. And I feel like it'll definitely just be more of how that Bengals offensive line is going to be able to stop guys like Micah Parsons and, how that Cowboys defense goes. And, they definitely got to Tom Brady last week with a depleted offensive line. And, Joe Burrow's offensive line has not proven to be the greatest right now, but maybe we'll see a bounce back for them. So it's basically just going to be how that offensive line of the Bengals competes with that Cowboys defense, and I feel like Bengals should win this game easily. But maybe we'll be saying Cooper Rush is that man on Monday. We'll see. But right now, I'm gonna have to go with the Bengals winning this game easily in Jerry World. We're gonna get into our next game in the afternoon slate, and it's Texans and Broncos. This is in Denver, so this is Russell Wilson's home opener and his new team. And the Texans, look, they look like they can compete. They are trying. I mean, obviously, they have Davis Mills, the new quarterback. They're having Damian Pierce as the running back. And, Brandon Cooks is still going to get his touches in the receiving core, but definitely not the week one that they were hoping for, obviously, after having that big lead and then choking it and then now settling for the tie. Definitely some bigger questions there on the mindset of the Texans heading into this year, whether they're trying to compete or not. And then for the Broncos, obviously just horrible defensively week one in terms of penalties, and their play was just not the greatest, and how the Denver Broncos have used to play defensively. They still have Bradley Chubb, and they just lost. I believe Justin Simmons may be going on IR, so that's a big loss for that secondary if they lose Simmons for a long period of time. But they still have PS2 Patrick Surtain, and he definitely is one of the best corners in the National Football League. And I feel like the Broncos should bounce back and get their week one win after losing to the Seahawks on the road. And for the Texans, I feel like that defense is just I feel like the Texans defense is not going to be able to stop Russell Wilson. I feel like Russell Wilson will get his resurgence in this game. Ari, offensively, what do you like from both teams, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Texans are definitely a scrappy team who can compete with anyone. Denver, like you said, Russell's home opener, so it should be a lot of energy, in the stadium and in the crowd. I don't think it's going to be, a blowout necessarily, but I do think the Broncos are going to be a little bit too much offensively. Looking for another big game for Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, potentially Jerry Jeudy. So, I think this is a good bounce back spot for the Broncos at home. But Justin Simmons is a big loss for their defense. I'd like the Texans to do, some things offensively. We saw last week Rex Burkhead was the lead back, so interesting to see if that continues or if Damian Pierce starts to see a bigger role himself. But offensively, for the game, I like the Broncos to pull it out.
Yeah, I like the Broncos offensively to pull this one out as well. And the Houston Texans, they're definitely a scrappy team. They love to compete and play hard, but I just feel like that Broncos offense is going to be a little too much. You mentioned Devontae Williams and Melvin Gordon. Those two are definitely going to be getting their touches in the backfield, and then hopefully a lot more of Cortland Sutton from week one to week two, the big wide receiver, and then also you have Jerry Jeudy, potentially the deep threat. And I feel like this game can definitely go in the Broncos' favor. Right now, the Broncos are somehow a 10-point favorite. Texans may cover, but I feel like that offense for the Broncos is definitely going to be a little too much to compete with that Texans team, and I feel like the Broncos will definitely win this game and get their first win of the season. Now, the final game in the afternoon slate is the Cardinals and the Raiders on Sunday, and the Cardinals looked horrible offensively in that week one matchup against the Chiefs at home. They just couldn't find anything. Kyler Murray was struggling. We didn't get to see much of James Conner. Obviously one of the bigger questions was how Kyler Murray was going to be throwing the ball when there's not that much to throw to, and if Marquise Brown could step up. And, he stepped up, but they were already down by 30. So it didn't really matter at that point. And, there's still the health of Zach Ertz. That's a bigger question for that offense. And then for the Raiders, obviously, the Derek Carr, Devontae Adams connection is going to be there. Same for Darren Waller. Hunter Renfrow is going to get involved as well. We'll see how that offense looks now. And this is kind of the Chandler Jones revenge game for him, because obviously Chandler Jones used to play for the Cardinals, then signed with the Raiders in the offseason. So definitely be a great it would definitely be interesting to see how Chandler Jones just applies so much pressure to Kyler Murray, because it looked like the Chiefs were just applying so much pressure last week against the Cardinals last week. Now you have Chandler Jones on the opposite side of the ball, along with Max Crosby, who both had great seasons last year for their respective teams. And now, right now, the Raiders are already a 6-point favorite at home in their home opener in Vegas. Ari, look, I feel like this Cardinals team is just going to be – of course they're going to get their points, but I feel like there's going to be too much against the Raiders team, who I feel is better defensively. If J.J. Watt plays, then it's a different story. But I like this Raiders team in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. There's a lawnmower next to me, but I agree. I like the Cardinals to bounce back offensively, but the Raiders will be a little bit too much for them. I like this to be a somewhat high-scoring game on both sides. I think the Cardinals offense will bounce back after the last week's disaster week against the Chiefs. But the Raiders offensively, I think Hunter Renfrow gets involved a little bit more. Devontae Adams, is going to do what Devontae Adams does. Darren Waller, I think Josh Jacobs is a better game as well. Derek Carr, I don't think he's going to throw, the couple picks he threw last week as well. So I like the Raiders to pull this one out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I like the Raiders to pull this one out as well at home. Definitely going to be interesting to see how this Cardinals offense will be looking now after their Week 1 loss to the Chiefs. Hopefully, resurging that offense heading into Vegas, heading into Week 2. For Las Vegas, obviously, Derek Carr at the end definitely made a couple of mistakes. So it'll definitely be interesting how he bounces back against the Cardinals at home as well. I definitely have Vegas in this game. It's going to be close. It's definitely going to be a good shootout, but I have Vegas pulling away at the end. And then the final game on Sunday is Sunday night, and it's between the Bears and the Packers, good old NFC North rivalry. And look, the Packers, obviously, Aaron Rodgers was trying, but he had no one to throw the ball to. Obviously, Alan Lazard, the one key member from that offense last year, was doubtful, and he's still questionable for this Sunday night matchup in Lambeau. And then for the Bears, obviously, they got a gritty win against the 49ers in a horrible, horrible weather game. It was an ugly win, but it was still a win. Justin Fields did not really throw the ball well, but, I felt just because the surrounding cast around him is just not that great. But probably a better weather game going up to Lambeau in September instead of November. I feel like the Packers hopefully offensively will have that resurgence, because obviously last week against the Vikings, I felt the Vikings just always will have their number because the Vikings just resurged on both sides of the ball. Really getting to Aaron Rodgers defensively, and then Justin Jefferson is going to Justin Jefferson every single week. So it was great to see him just absolutely ball out last week. Ari, look, obviously for the Bears, they're probably going to be relying on the run game a lot more of David Montgomery, probably Khalil Herbert. And then for the Packers, we'll just see which wide receivers are going to be catching the ball on Sunday. Who do you have winning this game? What do you like offensively?
I'm tempted to go to the Bears here. I think that they can put similar pressure on Aaron Rodgers that the Vikings did, but I still can't do it. I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. I believe Alan Lazard returned to practice yesterday on Wednesday, so it looks like he's probably going to return this week, which will be huge, like you mentioned, for the Packers offense, because Rodgers had no rapport with anybody on the field last week outside of maybe like Robert Tonyan. So Lazard's return will be big. I'm looking for better games from Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, even though I think he had a touchdown last week. And then on the Bears side, I think David Montgomery's definitely going to have a better game, as well as Cole Kmet, who I think had 0 catches last week. And Darnell Mooney, I think, there's going to be obviously it's going to be better field conditions as well. So just a better offensive game for the Bears in general. But I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be just a little bit too much offensively for the Bears, even though they're going to be able to, put pressure on him and make it tough and make it, a tight game that comes down to the wire. But I'm still leaning towards the Packers to pull it out here at home.
Look, the stats are saying that the Bears should probably win this game, but Aaron Rodgers has owned Chicago ever since he became a member of the Green Bay Packers, and I feel it's going to continue. Now that they're playing in Lambeau too, I feel like Aaron Rodgers. Look, remember last year when Aaron Rodgers played New Orleans Week 1, we were talking about, oh, is he washed up? Oh, is he looking bad? Oh, because he can't do it anymore. And then they went on and won the NFC North again. So I feel like Week 1 is just not good for Aaron Rodgers, but I feel like how the bounce back win against a team that he is very familiar with in the Bears. I like to see the resurgence of the Packers offense, hopefully with Alan Lazard there. We'll still see A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones hopefully get a lot of playing time on Sunday night as well. After Week 1, you want to go with the Bears, but I just can't. I literally just can't. I know the Bears are going to lose. The Packers are definitely going to win this game at home. It's definitely going to be a low-scoring game, but I feel like the Packers may pull it out in the end. I think the Packers, a 10-point favorite the last I checked. I believe that is true. Yeah, the Packers are a 10-point favorite. If that's a little too high, I feel like it's going to be maybe coming on to maybe a touchdown or maybe even lower than that. But I feel like the Packers are definitely going to pull this game out and win on Sunday Night Football, definitely. And then We're going to get into Monday nights real quick here. There's 2 Monday night games. This is the special that ESPN is doing. The first game starts at about 4:15 Pacific time, and it's the Titans going to Buffalo to play the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills obviously right now are like one of the best teams in the whole league on how they looked on their first game of the season going to the Los Angeles Rams. Allen looked amazing. We saw this research. We saw the surgeons of Gabriel Davis. Stephon Diggs still got his touches and had a really good game. The defense looked good. They really got to Matthew Stafford, and the Titans, I feel like they just had a fluke against a really, really bad Giants team that somehow got the win. And I feel like this Titans team is definitely going to be one of the teams that should be better than they really are. I feel like the Titans team is definitely going to struggle. I feel like the Bills are definitely going to just easily win offensively compared to how that offense for the Titans is going to look right now. Ari, what do you like offensively? And I mean, do you really have the Titans winning, or is it Bills Mafia?
Yeah, I think the Bills roll here pretty easily. Too much offensively. I mean, if the Giants can contain Derrick Henry, I think the Bills can too. So, I mean, you're still starting Derrick Henry in fantasy, but, have your expectations limited, although obviously he can break off a big run anytime he touches the ball. There's really nothing offensively outside of Henry that I like, for the Titans. I mean, I don't love Robert Woods. I like Treylon Burks as a player, but I don't see him having, in a huge game early in the season. The Bills, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis should have, another huge game. We'll see if they can kind of get the run game going with Devin Singletary, potentially Zach Moss, and then James Cook. But I mean, just to win this game, I think the Bills win pretty easily, straight up. And I don't know what the spread is, but they'll probably cover that too.
Yeah, I think right now the Bills are a 10-point favorite in this game, and I feel like they'll definitely easily cover that. And you mentioned if the Giants can handle Derrick Henry, I'm pretty sure that this Bills defense, which is one of the best in the country, can definitely handle Derrick Henry as well. The offense will just be too much. The Bills' offense will be too much for that Titans defense, and I feel like the Bills will easily win this game on Monday night. And then the second Monday night matchup, the final game of the Week 2 slate, the Vikings will travel to Philly to play the Eagles, and I feel this game is definitely going to be one of the more intriguing Week 1 matchups that I'm definitely going to try and watch. I mean, you have two pass-heavy offenses now. You have Jalen Hurts leading the charge for the Eagles with A.J. Brown, who had his touches last week, had over 100-something yards. And, we didn't get to see much of Devontae Smith, but we'll hopefully see a returns from him. We also saw, Miles Sanders be a lot more involved in the run game as well. I mean, for the Vikings, they look like the best offense in football right now. Justin Jefferson just easily coasting against the Green Bay offense. Didn't get to see much of Adam Thielen, but that's kind of the thing. Is if Justin Jefferson's having a good day, then Adam Thielen's not, and vice versa. Look, this game is definitely going to be one of the more intriguing games to watch, just from both sides of the ball. Philly's defense definitely struggled against the run when they were playing the Lions last week, and I found this crazy stat that Jordan Davis, when he was on the field, like the run was only like one maybe 1.4 yards potentially for DeAndre Swift, but then when it was off the field, it was like a 10-yard run every time. So just shows you how Jordan Davis defensively can really make or break the Eagles defensively, and that may be a big thing for Dalvin Cook coming into this game. And look, Ari, I feel like this game is definitely going to be a lot more offensive. You have two teams that are, that put up big numbers last week. Philly right now is a 2-point favorite just because it's a home game. It's Philly's home opener. I feel like it definitely be electric in Philly as well. I like the Vikings in this game just because I feel like they can easily contain Jalen Hurts. If the Lions were able to do it for a good amount of the time last week, I feel like the Vikings will be able to do it as well this week defensively. And then offensively, I feel like Justin Jefferson will just show them why the Eagles passed on him and why they should not have passed on him once again. And I feel like the Vikings will definitely win this game. But Ari, what do you like offensively? Obviously, they're Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown. But what else do you like offensively for both teams, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, like you said, this is also the game I'm most looking forward to this week. At least fantasy wise, I think we're going to see another high-scoring game like we saw between the Eagles and Lions last week. A lot of fireworks on both sides. Not, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, obviously. Dalvin Cook, another big game. I'm looking for a bigger game from Adam Thielen than what he had last week. You mentioned Devontae Smith didn't do too much. We'll see if he can step up, as well as Dallas Goedert, for the Eagles' passing offense. And the Eagles' backfield, Melton has led the way, but we also saw Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott had a touchdown as well on the ground. So we'll see if all those guys are utilized again, which is, most likely. But based on last week, I trust the Vikings defense a little bit more than the Eagles defense, to make that one stop that they need at the end of the game. So I'm leaning towards the Vikings as well here on the road. And what I think will be another game that's, probably in the 30s for both teams scoring wise. And, there should be a lot of fireworks, both sides. It's one of the highest over-under totals, for a reason. I believe it's third behind the Chargers Chiefs and then the Raiders Cardinals. And I would probably put this game as the highest scoring game of the week. So I'm looking forward to this game closing out week 2.
I definitely agree with you. I like this game week 2. It's definitely going to be one of the more offensive games. You have two high potent offenses in the Vikings, obviously with Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and more. And then you have the Eagles, who obviously are really dependent on how Jalen Hurts can play this year. And it's him. They brought in A.J. Brown. They still have Devontae Smith. They have Miles Sanders in the backfield. I like the Vikings as well to make that one stop to really end the game. But I feel like this is definitely going to be one of the more intriguing games to watch in week 2, just from a fantasy perspective and, just from an NFL perspective, because obviously the whole storyline is Justin Jefferson. Obviously, the Eagles passed on him to get Jalen Reagor, and now Jalen Reagor's, I believe, on the Vikings. So the Vikings now have the Eagles' first round pick and the guy who passed on. So definitely a big game just for Eagles' pride right there. But I definitely have the Vikings pulling this one out and getting the win to end the week 2 slate here. But we've had a long episode here, but we just wanted to cover every single game this weekend from Thursday tonight all the way to Monday. But Ari, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, yeah, just looking forward to another week. We'll see. Last week there was a lot of, what you could argue is a little bit flukiness. So we'll see if things kind of get back, to quote unquote normal, or if we see, less flukiness, if you want to call it that. But looking forward to another fun week of fantasy football, NFL, starting tonight.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover. We'll cover all of it on Monday. Obviously, we have some college football this weekend, as we talked about yesterday, and then we also have a bunch of NFL games, obviously, on Sunday, starting tonight. But this has been another episode of AKP Sports Talk. Thank you guys for sticking with us. It's been a long one, but we had to give you every single detail, every single football game this weekend. Thanks for sticking around. We will see you guys on Monday for our recap of the weekend. This has been